Have you ever been in a room full of people, smiling, laughing, and then heard something that made your heart stop? It was my 29th birthday. My family was gathered at a small café table, and everything looked perfect. I should have felt happy everyone was there, smiling, laughing. The cake in front of me, it should have been the best night, but it wasn't. I could feel the tension in the air. My chest was tight, and no matter how much I tried to push it away, that strange feeling wouldn't leave. My mom, Patricia, sat across from me with that proud, rehearsed smile. My dad, Mark, was beside her, nodding along to everything. Eric, my older brother, and his wife were there too, talking and laughing. But I wasn't really part of the conversation. My mind was somewhere else, tangled in 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. And then I heard it. While everyone's here, go and change her locks. My breath stopped. The words were so quiet, barely a whisper, but they hit me like a hammer. I froze, holding my fork halfway to my mouth. What did she just say? I didn't dare look up, didn't want anyone to see the confusion and fear that must have been written all over my face. But in that moment, I knew something wasn't right. Why would my mom say that? Change my locks? I was an adult. I had a life, my own apartment. I wasn't a child anymore. My father didn't seem to notice anything, but my mom's words lingered in the air, heavy. I looked up and saw Eric quietly getting up, grabbing his keys, leaving without saying a word. Did you do it? My mom asked him when he returned about an hour later, her voice sharp, impatient. Eric didn't answer right away. He just said one sentence that turned my world upside down. There's police tape around her door. The drive home felt like it took forever. I tried to push the panic down, telling myself it was probably nothing. I was overreacting. But the longer I sat in silence, the more my thoughts spun. My mom's words kept echoing in my mind. Go and change her locks. What did she mean by that? Why would she say something like that on my birthday? I hadn't been thinking about it before my life was finally in a good place. I had a job I liked, a place of my own, and my son Noah was healthy. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was doing okay. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When I pulled up to my apartment building, the first thing I saw were the flashing lights, red and blue, slicing through the night. My heart skipped a beat as I parked the car and got out. This wasn't just a bad feeling anymore. It was real. The police cars were parked in front of my building, and I could see the yellow tape stretched around my door. I didn't know what I expected when I got there, but this definitely wasn't it. My pulse quickened, and my legs felt unsteady as I approached the entrance. The officer standing by the door was young, maybe just a couple of years older than me. His tired eyes softened when he saw me. "Can I help you?" he asked gently. I nodded, though my voice trembled as I spoke. "This is my apartment. I'm Emily Warren." He studied me for a moment before nodding. "We've been waiting for you. Let me take you inside." I followed him up the stairs, my mind racing. The worst part? I knew whatever was going on inside, I wasn't going to like it. As I walked into my apartment, it felt like I was stepping into someone else's life. The police had already taped off the front door. The damage was obvious. The lock was broken, and the door frame was splintered like someone had tried to break in. But nothing was missing. The TV, laptop, all my things, nothing had been touched. It didn't feel like a robbery. It felt like something worse. I walked inside, Officer Grant following closely behind. The room was eerily quiet. My eyes scanned the space, but nothing stood out at first glance. Everything was in its place, but the feeling of violation was suffocating. It was my home, but it didn't feel like it anymore. Who would do this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Officer Grant didn't answer right away. He looked at the door frame again, scribbling notes in his pad. His gaze shifted from the broken lock to the other side of the room. "We found a crowbar in the hallway," he said slowly, clearly trying to figure it out as he spoke. "It doesn't look like it was a random break-in." I nodded, my head spinning. What did he mean by that? If nothing had been stolen, why was the door broken down? And why had they left a crowbar behind? My stomach churned as the pieces started to fall into place. But the strangest part wasn't the crowbar or the broken door. It was the feeling that someone had been in my space, in my life, poking around. I didn't even want to think about who it could have been. "Do you know if anyone's had access to your place?" Officer Grant asked, looking at me closely. I hesitated. I knew Eric had a key, but the idea of him being involved made me feel sick. Still, I couldn't ignore it. He'd been in my life, too close for comfort for years. I gave him a quiet nod. The longer I stayed in my apartment, the more unsettled I became. It felt like something was missing, like the space had been hollowed out. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I wasn't alone. I tried to focus. The police were still working, taking notes, dusting for fingerprints, talking to the neighbors, but I was stuck in my own head, trying to figure out who could have done this to me, who had the key to my place, who had access to my life. And then it hit me, my mom. For as long as I could remember, she'd always controlled everything. Even when I was an adult, she made decisions for me. She always knew where I was, who I was with, and what I I was doing. Her influence had always been there, lingering just out of sight. Could she be behind this? I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. No, she wouldn't. But the more I thought about the conversation at the cafe, the whisper, the way she had seemed so calm when she said it, the more the possibility started to feel real. I stepped out onto the fire escape and took a few deep breaths. The cool night air helped clear my mind, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, something I wasn't ready to understand. As I paced back and forth, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out quickly, hoping it was someone with good news. But it wasn't. It was a text from Eric. I need to talk. I'll be there soon. I stared at the message for a few seconds before my hands started shaking. I barely had time to process the text from Eric before he showed up at my door. My heart was pounding as I opened it, half expecting him to walk in and start explaining everything. But instead, he stood there in the hallway, his face pale and his eyes darting around the room. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, shifting from foot to foot like he was debating whether to speak or run. Eric, what happened? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My head was spinning, but I needed answers. He avoided my eyes, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. It's not what you think. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The way he said it, like he already knew what I was thinking. That was the moment the pieces really started to fall into place. What do you mean it's not what I think? I asked, stepping closer, unable to control the urgency in my voice. Eric, what's going on? Why was there police tape around my door? Why was my apartment broken into? He glanced over at the door, like he was scared to even step inside. Look, Emily, it's complicated. Complicated? What did that even mean? My mind was racing. All I wanted was some answers. I didn't care how hard the truth was. I needed to understand what was happening. Just tell me the truth, Eric. I snapped, frustration seeping into my tone. What did you do? He looked up at me then, and for the first time, I saw the fear in his eyes. He didn't speak at first, but when he did, his words shattered everything I thought I knew. I didn't want to, but Mom, she asked me to change your locks, to make sure you didn't find out. My world stopped. Eric's words hung in the air, suffocating me. Mom asked me to change your locks. The truth slammed into me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to yell at him, but all I could do was stare at him, feeling the weight of his betrayal. I had always known my mom had control over everything, but this was different. Why? Why would she do this to me? I whispered, my voice shaking with disbelief. Eric shifted uncomfortably, running his hand through his hair. She said it was for your own good, he muttered, that you couldn't be trusted. She said you needed help. I shook my head. Help? It was like I was hearing him speak in another language. How could he just go along with it? How could he be so willing to obey, to blindly follow her instructions? How could you let her do this? I demanded, my voice breaking. How could you let her treat me like this? Eric's face twisted with guilt. I didn't want to, Em. I didn't want to hurt you, but she said she was just trying to protect you. Protect me? From what? From myself? The weight of it all was overwhelming. For years, I had thought I was in control of my life, but in that moment, I realized how much of it had been dictated by my mother's decisions. How had I missed all the signs? I walked away from Eric, pacing back and forth in the living room. My mind was racing. I could feel the rage bubbling up inside me, mixing with confusion and heartbreak. I didn't know what I had to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I grabbed my phone from the table and dialed a number I never thought I'd call. I had to take control back, no matter what it cost me. The night after Eric left was the longest I'd ever had. The weight of everything hung over me, pressing down on my chest like I couldn't breathe. My apartment felt too quiet. The flashing police lights from earlier were still haunting me. I needed answers. I needed to know what was happening and why. I paced back and forth, trying to piece things together, but all I could think about was how much of my life had been shaped by lies. Lies I hadn't even known existed. I had thought I knew my family, my mom, my dad, even Eric. They were my everything. But now, everything felt like it was built on sand. I couldn't just sit here and let them destroy my life. I had to fight back. I couldn't let my mom continue controlling me, manipulating me, pulling the strings behind the scenes. It had to end. I pulled my laptop from the drawer and started searching anything I could find that might give me a clue about what was really going on. My heart was pounding as I typed, my mind racing. I was looking for anything, any little thread I could pull on that might give me the truth. I started with the basics, my bank accounts, my property records. Then I moved on to something that felt even more personal. Old family documents. I dug through old emails, contracts, anything that might explain my mother's actions. I was determined to find the truth, even if it meant digging through the most uncomfortable parts of my life. The more I searched, the more I uncovered things I wasn't ready to see. Documents that shouldn't have existed, forms with my signature, documents I had never signed, financial accounts I didn't know about. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Sabrina, asking if I was okay. I typed back quickly, trying to hold it together. I'm fine. I need to do something. I barely slept that night, my mind racing through the possibilities. By morning, I had gathered everything I could find. My laptop was filled with screenshots of documents, my name on papers I had never signed, financial accounts with my information I knew nothing about. But it wasn't enough. I needed something concrete, something that couldn't be brushed aside. I decided to confront my mother. I drove to her house, the familiar route feeling different, like I was headed to a battlefield. My heart was pounding in my chest, but this time it wasn't fear, it was determination. I had all the proof I needed. I wasn't leaving without answers. When I knocked on the door, she answered quickly, her smile sharp and practiced, just like always. Emily, darling, what a surprise, she said, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She was already bracing for something. She knew something was coming. Mom, we need to talk, I said, stepping inside without waiting for her invitation. I had made up my mind. This wasn't a conversation about small things or family drama. This was about the truth. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing as she closed the door behind me. What's this about, Emily? She asked, her voice soft, but with an edge to it. I pulled out the stack of documents I'd found, placing them on the kitchen table in front of her. You've been using my name to hide assets, haven't you? I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. Why? What's going on? For a long moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at the papers, and I could see the fear in her eyes. Finally, she spoke. I didn't want you to know, Emily, but you're right. It's true. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The silence between us hung thick in the air, suffocating. My mother hadn't moved since I laid the documents in front of her. She stared at them like they were something foreign, something she couldn't escape. I felt a sick knot in my stomach, the weight of what she had done pressing down on me. I didn't want you involved, she said finally, her voice soft, almost pleading. I thought if I kept everything quiet, kept you safe. Safe? I interrupted, my voice rising despite myself. You've been lying to me my whole life, and now you want to talk about keeping me safe? The anger bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, the betrayal so deep it felt like it could swallow me whole. She recoiled slightly, as if my words had physically struck her, but I couldn't stop now. Why, Mom? Why did you do this? Why drag me into it? She took a deep breath and finally met my gaze. It wasn't just for me. It was for your father, too. You don't understand. He's in too deep. There are things you don't know about him. Things you wouldn't understand. I felt like I'd been slapped. My father? The man I trusted? The man I thought I knew was somehow involved in this, too? My mind spun. This wasn't just about my mom. It was about everything. About my entire family. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream at her, to demand every single detail. But I knew one thing. I couldn't just let this go. I had to take control. I had to protect my life, my son's life, no matter what it cost me. She seemed to sense the shift in me. Emily, please, she begged, her voice cracking. Don't go to the police. Don't make this worse. I stood up, heart pounding. It's already too late for that. The drive home was the longest one I'd ever taken. My mother's face, her pleading eyes, the way her voice cracked as she begged me not to go to the police kept replaying in my mind. She'd spent years controlling me, manipulating me, and yet, in that moment, she was the one begging for control. It was almost laughable, but it wasn't funny. It was terrifying. I'd never felt so alone. The truth was out, but I still didn't know the full extent of the damage. How deep did this go? How far were my parents willing to go to hide their lies? The questions burned in my mind as I drove through the empty streets, my grip tight on the steering wheel. When I walked through the door of my apartment, the silence hit me like a wall. I sat down at my kitchen table, my mind racing. It was only a matter of time before I'd have to face the police, the courts, everything. There was no going back. The decision to take action couldn't be undone. But as much as I hated to admit it, part of me was relieved. I had spent so many years letting them control me, always trying to make them happy, always second-guessing myself, but now I had the truth, and for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of it. I grabbed my phone. This wasn't just about me anymore. I had to protect Noah, and I wouldn't let them take him from me. I couldn't let them win. I typed a message to Officer Grant. I need to meet. I'm ready to move forward. I hit send. The days after I sent the message to Officer Grant felt like a blur. Time seemed to slow, each moment heavy with the knowledge that my my life was about to change forever. The police investigation was underway, and once the truth came out, there was no turning back. I had already accepted that no matter what happened, I was going to face it head on. What I wasn't prepared for, though, was the silence. At first, it felt like a storm was coming. I expected my parents to show up, to call, to do something, but instead, there was just silence. No more texts from Eric, no more phone calls from my mom, pretending like everything was normal. It was like they had vanished from my life. I tried to focus on Noah. He needed me more than anything else. I picked him up from school, made dinner, helped with his homework, all the little things that gave me a sense of normalcy. But there was something about the silence that kept gnawing at me. One evening, as I was putting Noah to bed, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Warren? Officer Grant's voice came through, calm but firm. The investigation is moving forward. We've gathered enough evidence to move forward with charges against your parents. My heart pounded. The weight of what was coming settled on me like a stone in my chest. My parents, my mother were going to be held accountable for everything. Your cooperation has been invaluable, Officer Grant continued, but I need to tell you, you might want to prepare for some backlash. Your family will fight back. It won't be easy. I knew that already, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel so much more real. But in that moment, all I could feel was a strange sense of relief. The storm had finally arrived, and I was ready for it. The trial was over. The months of waiting, the legal battles, the emotional toll, it had all come to this. My parents had taken a plea deal. My father was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison. My mother, for her cooperation, was given 5 years of probation, a massive fine, and a court-ordered restraining order. She couldn't contact me or Noah again. The family I had known for so long, the family I thought I could trust, had crumbled under the weight of their lies. But in the quiet moments, when I looked at Noah playing in the living room or reading before bed, I knew that everything had changed for the better. We were free. Finally, the world outside had moved on. People went to work, went to the grocery store, lived their lives. But for me, everything felt different now. I wasn't carrying the weight of their secrets anymore. I wasn't their cover story. I wasn't their pawn. I had found my strength, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me again. One evening, Sabrina came over with dinner, just like she always did. We sat in my small, cozy apartment, sharing a glass of wine as we laughed about the absurdities of life. And as I watched Noah run around the kitchen with a goofy grin, I realized something. This was my family now. Not the ones who had controlled and betrayed me, but the ones who had stood by me, the ones who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. As we sat together that night, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. I had fought for my freedom, for my son, for myself. And while it hadn't been easy, I knew I was finally where I was meant. Sometimes, revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about finding peace. And in the end, peace is the only thing that truly sets you free. If you've ever felt trapped by your past, know this. You have the power to break free. If you're going through something similar, you're not alone.